is wise and understanding among you? Show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness, born of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not be boastful and false to the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, devilish. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there will also be disorder and wickedness of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace for those who make peace.
What I understand from this is that there's a wisdom from above, which is a good kind of wisdom, and then there's another wisdom which is not from above, but it's still called wisdom.
The second kind of wisdom, I think, that someone thinks they're wise, but actually it's compounded ignorance, they're not wise. And that does not come from above, even though apparently it may seem that it comes from above.
That goes back to our conversation about the different ways in which we can hear and see the same thing. And to some it's wisdom, and to some they think it's wisdom, but in fact it's foolishness.
Got into it by asking about, there seem to be two different types of wisdom. I think wisdom from above, and then a wisdom not from above. And we asked, what's the difference between these two types of wisdom? Are they both really wisdom? Is one of them wisdom? In a false sense, and then we ended up asking, is the earthly quality of that second type, is it necessarily bad, or can there be good forms of earthliness?
As we read through and we're reading about this wisdom which is not from above, and the description was that it's earthly and unspiritual, and then the third word was devilish. But before I got to devilish, I was thinking this was actually a positive thing. It then came out that this was not supposed to be a positive type of wisdom, and that brought out just different approaches based on where you're coming from.
It says when there's envy and selfish ambition, there will also be disorder and wickedness of every kind. And it certainly seems that if you have a strong degree, it could lead to that disorder. But it seems also if you don't have enough focusing on the self, in certain ways that could be selfish.
It struck me the way it said selfish ambition when I read it this time through, that perhaps ambition is not necessarily a wrong thing, but selfish ambition is. You can be ambitious for your children or for your people or for God, but to be selfishly ambitious is the error.
The word translated envy is zelos, which I presume we get zeal from, which again is actually zeal is a word that can be either positive or negative.
Well, actually, that really ties in because there's actually a rabbinic interpretation that talks about without kin'ah, which is envy or zealousness. Without that form of jealousness, no one would build a home or take a wife or have children.
That what is the sort of envy that produces the wrong kind of fruits, if you like, and what produces the good kind of fruits is quite finely distinguished.
What I'd find really helpful, that I need everyone's help, is to do a kind of map. We could use the flip chart of how all these different concepts fit together in the James text, because we've got words like wisdom, works, truthfulness, righteousness, peace.
And there is a simplicity at one level. The wisdom that's from below, or that's devilish, or that's not from above, produces disorder and wickedness. And the wisdom that is from above produces peace. That's the simple.
I mean, my thought is, I think there is a problem here between the tribes. There may be conflicts and wars, and maybe he's trying to mediate between the tribes or between the leaders or something, and that's why he's mentioning the link between above and peace, because here peace is really a big issue, and wars, I think. I don't know.
It does seem that there's some specific problem that he's addressing here.
Yes.
Possibly the issue of false teaching.
Do not be boastful and false to the truth.
We ought to be beginning to wind up the conversation at this point so that we have time to read the Quranic passage.
One thing that I took away was the way in which the people coming from different traditions actually can approach a text that might seem to be potentially polemical, that could have a connotation of Judaism portrayed as the earthly one and Christianity portrayed as the spiritual tradition. But I think the fact of all of us reading it together, it gave it a different feel. That it wasn't simply one person's text attacking another person's text, but that we were all together around the table reading it together, and that I think allowed us to explore the text in ways without feeling threatened.
It was quite playful. I think that's something that first surprised me about scriptural reasoning, that it's quite playful, there's a lot of laughter going on. It's not a scholarly, serious, dry exercise. That was something that very much came out for me.
What I took away from the session was I would like to explore further what kind of feeling do the texts around wisdom in the Islamic tradition, particularly in the Quran, what kind of feeling do they give? I would like to contrast that with the texts of that we've covered from the Old Testament and the New.